Time for our Options Corner, where we analyze unusual options trades that we're seeing throughout the day. Welcome in Tom White, host of Fast Market here on Schwab Network. Good to see you, Tom. Look, we have a shortened trading week. You have a big picture thought on the markets before we get to all these good trades? Are you hearing anything?
Yeah, we're coming up on those, the final 5 trading days of the year and the first 2 of 2025, where, typically we see 1.3% gains during that time frame. And I think a lot of people after last week's pullback are going to be, hoping that that comes to fruition here. There won't be any data out. There won't be any earnings out to kind of push the market down. So, yeah, maybe the path of least resistance may be to the upside, despite the turnaround on the narrative from the Fed on rate cuts for next year. But I think you have to wait going into 2025 until earnings season kicks off about the second and third week of January. I think that's where you're going to see the rubber meet the road, because valuations in the S&P 500 still really elevated at this point. We're getting dragged higher by the Mag 7 names. If you look at maybe that divergence between the overall S&P 500 and maybe some of the equal weighted names, or you look at industrials, materials, some of the consumer staples have been lagging a little bit. There hasn't been rotation into those names. So if the Mag 7 breaks, what happens to the market then? Do they rotate into those underperformers? But yeah, it should be an interesting setup going into 2025, Nicole.
All right, and you make a good point, right, about the final 5 days and then the 2 first days,
Yeah.
So we'll watch for that. Okay, let's get to the moves that you are finding. You found first a bullish trade on Micron today. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this comes on the heels of that big pullback that we saw after their earnings last week. And if you looked at, that's the top line revenue and the EPS beats for the quarter, Micron really blew it out of the water, but then they kept talking. And they lowered guidance pretty severely for Q2 expectations. They lowered guidance for revenue nearly $1 billion. And then they saw some weakness in EPS also. Now, you have to remember, anybody that invests in the memory side of chip makers like Micron, like Western Digital, and some of the others, this is a really cyclical sector where they've got bad quarters and good quarters, inventory builds, inventory blowouts. So you got to take that into consideration. A lot of the commentary post the earnings from the analyst community were relatively positive. It did get one downgrade, but everybody just kind of lowered their price targets, which were elevated just a tad. But you have to wonder about, moving forward, the amount of HBMs or high bandwidth memory chips that are needed. Micron's right in the mix of that. They're the leader in that space. It's just that they were dragged down by smartphone sales, PC sales. The other part of Micron's business were really lagging, and there's no turnaround in sight for maybe those parts of the business. But the HBMs, the high bandwidth memory chips, are now about 50% of the revenue. So that's what I think investors are going to be focused on. I did see some unusual option activity in here. And this is really short-term positioning, just a December 27th weekly options that expire this Friday. Trader bought over 20,000 of the 96 strike calls. These are far out of the money to the upside. They only paid an average debit of about 13 cents, so they're not paying a lot for these calls, but you've only got 4 days until expiration. The break-even 96.13 over the next 4 days. That's about 7% above the current share price. So if somebody thinks that maybe the Santa Claus rally is going to reignite the shares here in Micron into the end of the week, Nicole.
Wow, okay, and look, I mean, you can't believe it when you see that it's 40% off the heights. Yeah. I mean, the semis were driving the market one way or another. I mean, they were never laggards. They would either drive the market or sort of be in line with the market. It's sort of almost this scratch your head moment when you see that kind of sell-off. Let's get to American Airlines. You found a bearish trade you're going to tell us about.
Yeah, there hasn't been any much bearishness in the airlines over the last probably 6 months or so as American Airlines hit multi-year highs. You had United and Delta. They were close to all-time highs. TSA data supporting the fact that people are still traveling out there. Services side of the economy still doing really well. We're in the middle of holiday travel season. So we've heard a lot of positive commentary. That's why the stock's up about 25% this year. They've got the worst balance sheet out of the big $1.4 as far as debt on their balance sheet, but they're paying that down ahead of schedule, which is a positive here. But a lot of these names have been getting stretched here a little bit. We'll have to wait and see on Q1 numbers for fiscal year 2025 on if they can back it up, because crude oil prices remain low, so that's going to help margins here below $70 a barrel. But if you look at the unusual option activity, I'm going to highlight here. It's maybe somebody that's hedging a long stock position. It could be that, or it could be somebody that just wants to speculate to the downside that we're going to see American Airlines maybe turn around here. Typically, we'll see mid-quarter updates, and American Airlines already gave one that helps support the stock, where they nearly doubled their EPS estimates for the next quarter. But we did see a put buyer out here in the January 10th weekly cycle, so about 18 days to expiration. Trader bought nearly 2,000 of those 15 strike puts, paid in only a debit of about 12 cents, right? So there's not a lot of option premium in this low-cost stock. So that break even of $14.88 over the next 2.5 weeks, that's about 13% below the current share price. That's why I might be thinking that this might be just a hedge for a long stock position in case we do see some weakness heading into 2025 for some of the airlines, including American.
Yeah, and look, I think the airlines surprised a lot of folks. I don't think people expected them to do as well as they did. I mean, the Jets ETF was a nice performance too. So very interesting to find that trade. Okay, last but not least, Rumble. This one you found a bullish trade. We want to hear about it.
Yeah, not surprising that we're seeing some outsized call flows in Rumble. Right before I came on, the stock was up about 100% today. Up over 210% so far this year. Hit the highest level since going public in September of 2022, where it traded above 17. And all of this is on the back of an investment by Tether, $750 million. Only $250 million of that's going to be used by the company to shore up their balance sheet, make some investments in their business, which is video sharing platforms, right? They take a lot of advertising dollar. Is Tether going to leverage that and start, basically putting out ads for cryptocurrency? And that's what you have to start thinking about, because over the first 3 quarters, the Rumble's lost about $102 million over the first 3 quarters of this year, negative gross margin. So they needed something. That's why you're seeing the pop in the shares. Now, I mentioned only $250 million is going to be used by the company. The other $500 million is getting set aside for any shareholders that want to sell their shares to Tether for $7.50, Nicole, with the stock trading above 14. I don't think any of those shareholders are going to sell their shares at $7.50 to Tether. So maybe this is just a vote of confidence for this company, but you can see from the move that we're seeing today, a lot of call activity in here. Call volume is about 18 times normal daily average volume that we've seen over the last week of trading. One that stuck out to me was in the January 17th monthly options. Now, they traded this really early in the day, Nicole, before the stock really took off. The stock was up, but it wasn't up as high as it is now. They bought over 4,000 of the 10 strike calls, only paid an average debit of about $1.50 for these. So that break even of $11.50 over the next 25 days. Like I said, we're already above the 14 level, so far above the break even for this trader. Nice move by this person that maybe saw the news, started buying up calls right on the open in here on this 10 strike. And as I mentioned, a lot of call volume to the upside in this name today.
Yeah, and look, that move from Tether now alleviates all the liquidity concerns that everybody had. I didn't realize it was up 100% basically today. That's incredible.
Yeah.
All right, Tom White, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tom White.